What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. Pennell here, and we are back. 2025 NASCAR season is finally underway, and as always, we'll be kicking it off in the Sunshine State for the Daytona 500 on Sunday, February 16th around 2 p.m. Eastern. And if you're a longtime viewer of this channel, you all know I love plate tracks. And it's not because they're projectable; they're not projectable at all. But I love the strategy component to it because you can't just look at track history. You can't look at just basic medium projections all the time. Sure, it can give you a right idea of where to go, but understanding why you're building the lineups that you are building is extremely important for a track like this. But if you happen to be a long-time caller, first-time listener to this channel, what's up? My name is Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single weekend on this channel. I also go live on Sunday afternoons answering any questions you guys may end up having or any updates that I think I should warn you guys about from when I posted my previous video. And we are very data driven here. Look at the data, run the simulations, and we make our decisions based off of that. So if that sounds all fine and dandy to you, well, if you can do me a favor, make sure you leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. Let's dive right into it. All right, let's talk some strategy here for Daytona. Here's a picture of a track. If you don't know what it looks like, congratulations, you now do. It's a big track. It's 2.5 miles in length. We're going to have 200 laps this weekend. If you times that by 0.7, you get 140 total diameter points available to us this weekend. But that means nothing. You should not care about diameter points this week. They are completely irrelevant. First off, fast laps, impossible to project, completely random. And the laps led points, they just don't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things, just because of the nature of this beast, there's going to be so many lead changes. And a lot of times the guys that are leading laps, by the end, they'll probably end up crashed out. And if you're new to this, you might be asking, well, why is that? You know, the reason is they drive in a big, massive pack at Daytona because they're drafting off of each other. And when they're 2 and 3 wide, at some point, someone's going to make a block that's a bit too aggressive or someone's just going to make a really stupid move. And when that happens, especially at the front of the pack, it wipes out half the field. And that typically always happens at Daytona, whether it's in the beginning, the middle, or at the very end, or in the last lap. You don't know when it's going to happen, but it's probably going to happen. We're going to see multiple of these most likely. Well, in that case, you don't want those drivers that are starting up front. And typically it happens with drivers up front because they're the ones being the most aggressive. They're jockeying for position to put themselves in a place to either win a stage or win the entire race. So if you hear people this week say, hey, you should stack the back, and they literally mean you should stack the drivers starting in the very back. Names do not matter here. Yes, Denny Hamlin has major prestige at this track. A guy like Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, like these are great names. Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, great plate racers. That doesn't mean anything here. Not one thing matters other than where you are starting. And this graphic right here, if you don't get anything from this video, like if you just forget anything I say for some reason, I'm annoying you, boring you, whatever it may be, just try to remember this as best as possible. I scraped the data, try to prove to you a point. We're looking at the Daytona Next Gen races. So on the left, we have the starting positions 1 through 4. We think of this as the starting grid. And this is what typically happens. The guy in first has been losing almost 25 to 30 spots, then 20 spots for second, 15 for third and fourth. And the list just goes on until you get to about the halfway point. Harrison Burton winning from 20th last year is kind of skewing the data a little bit since we have a bit of a smaller sample size of 6 races. But once you get past that, it just gradually pretty much keeps increasing. The average DraftKings points has been increasing. The average FanDuel points. And in this next graphic, I made 4 charts here. The average finish by starting position, as you can tell, it just gets better pretty much. I mean, obviously there's a couple that go up and down. But the major trend line is typically the further back you start, the better you're going to finish because you're just, when everybody wrecks, you're just taking those spots if you're not trying. Like, you don't want your drivers trying for the majority of this race. You don't want them up front. You want to be losing money for the large portion of this race if you're looking to change the starting position. Red means bad, green means good. The green is typically where the drivers are starting in the back. And then at the bottom here, we just have the DraftKings points by starting position, and it's typically going up the further back we get. It's really as simple as this, guys. Like, for example, I'm recording this intro part before we get qualifying, but I always use this example. Say Chase Elliott is starting 38th, or we have some bum like Cody Ware starting in 37th. Chase Elliott would be like 40, 50% in that scenario. You're getting Cody Ware, I don't know, anywhere from like 5, 10% on if people get a little bit smarter, 3 to 5% if people are getting dumber, but anywhere around there. Sure, Chase Elliott's going to project to finish better. He's going to project better everywhere, but we have to keep in mind their floor and ceilings are literally the exact same, and Cody Ware's not going to be up front trying to win the race. He knows what he's here for. He's waiting for everybody to wreck out, and he's going to try to get his top 15 finish. Chase Elliott's one of those guys. He's going to be up front trying to win the race, and very decent chance that he could get caught up in a wreck, and you're getting Cody Ware at much lower ownership. And despite the name difference, the name power not being anywhere close to Elliott, they have the same exact upside. And if we look at the heat map here, this is a really good chart to look at just to see what drivers, like what kind of upside these drivers actually have. Now, in my own personal projections that I do post, I have floor and ceiling projections, which are perfect for this. Also optimal rates, ownership. So this will easily calculate the leverage and whatnot. But if you're just looking at it from this point of view, as you can see, the shades of green and the shades of red, the guys on the bottom, like the worst, like if we get 40 or 41 cars, the worst they can do is 0 to 1 points. If a guy wrecks out that starts in the back and he gets like 0 points, it's a heck of a lot better if a guy up front happens to wreck and they get minus 32. Like you can easily cash with multiple drivers wrecked as long as there was a big one, which you would pretty much assume there should be. And if they win the race starting up front, like someone starts third and wins, their upside's still really capped. They're going to get outscored by a guy that started 37th and ends up finishing, say, 12th or whatever. So there's really just not much upside at all from using these guys up front, even if they happen to win the race. And the last point I want to make before we get into the driver-by-driver breakdown is that don't be afraid to leave money on the table. That is the number one thing you can do for a race like this. Do not think that you have to get close to filling out your salary. This is not NFL. This is not NBA. MLB, you can kind of get away with that a little bit, but I am talking to the extremes, like leaving $20,000, $30,000 on the table. I know the last Daytona race we had on FanDuel, I left like $30-some thousand on the table, just played all the scrubs and ended up being my best lineup. We've seen the optimal Daytona once be like 33, 34, 35, 36. Like you can leave as much money on the table as you want. Do not think of these drivers as actually having salary. They mean absolutely nothing this week. It's all about starting position, and it's really as simple as that. And finally, moving on to the driver-by-driver breakdown, I do have to mention a couple things. First, it's a free video. Let me do my plug. But if you guys want to join the best NASCAR DFS community out there, links down below in the description for my Patreon. You can also get a free week trial. So if you want to come in and test drive all the new tools I've been working on all off season long, you can come in and try it out completely risk-free. And you can also, if you want to sign up for the entire season, you can save 20%. But basically here is everything you need to know. You can just pause it if you are interested and you can read everything that's on there. I did make several updates this season, improving the efficiency, running more simulations, covering more data, floor, median, and ceiling projections, optimal rates, ownership projections. Had the optimizer for DraftKings. We're also going to introduce contest sims this year, which I think would be pretty cool. Another big thing is I am going to be doing Xfinity and truck projections full-time over on the Patreon as well. Not posting videos for it because the demand's not there. But if you are interested in the lower level series, I will have whatever I do for Cup. It'll also be there for trucks and Xfinity. And we have more interactive editions this year. You can do driver group projections. We have the custom driver head-to-head matchups because I simulate every single driver versus each other. It'll give you the probability and fair odds of that matchup because every book's going to have different matchups. So you can just pop it in there. It'll give you an answer. And then we also have the lineup builder. So say you're hand building or just want to see if a lineup fits or whatnot. You just place an X in a certain category. It'll pop you the lineup for DraftKings or FanDuel, whatever you're playing on. And it'll give you all the answers right there. Pretty easy to use, and I think it's very cool. So if you want to come in, check it out. I made a lot of upgrades, and I think you will love it. If not, I'll shut up now, and we'll break down this slate. And the duels have completed. We have the entire starting grid. I thought the duels were awesome last night. And I'm assuming the 500 is probably going to be better, so I think we're in for a treat. Hopefully, they did move up the race 1 hour just because there is potential rain in the afternoon in Florida. Go figure, but not too big of a deal. Hopefully, we can get the entire race in. But we're going to start this sorted by salary, and we're going to start with the 9K range up first. We only have one 5-figure driver, that is Denny Hamlin. And like I said, guys, the starting position is the only thing that matters in this race. Is Denny Hamlin awesome at Daytona? Yes, he's a 3-time Daytona 500 winner. I don't care. He's starting in 8th. He could win this race, but I have that happening less than 10% of the time. I think he's going to be higher than 10% ownership. It really does not make sense for me to want to play Denny Hamlin. His upside is very capped, and the floor is extremely low. Just to give you guys an idea of how he's performed in the next-gen era, so far at Daytona, 6-race sample size, he's got an average finish of 27th, running position of 20th, not one top 15, 2 top 20s. Like, you can be extremely good, but that does not mean you're going to finish the race well. And you don't get points for how much money you're winning when it's the middle of stage 2. Means nothing. We're here for the end of the race, and all that matters is this starting position. We have Kyle Larson. He's going to be starting in 22nd, so that's definitely a bit more upside, but there's still downside. Like, yeah, you can think 20 seconds deep in the pack, but that's like half the field. Like, you could still lose like 20 positions, at least close to it. And while he tends to run very well at these track types, he usually finishes quite poorly. For whatever reason, he's an absolute magnet for carnage. Starting in 22nd, he is not safe. Do not play him in cash games. I don't care how owned he is. But in cash games, it's not worth the risk. I personally think he's going to come in around mid-20s as far as ownership, just because of the name value. He actually has place differential, and he's not that expensive, even though salary doesn't matter. But a lot of people are probably going to try to fill out their entire lineup. I would personally want to be underweight on Kyle Larson. Another guy that you probably want to be underweight on is Ryan Blaney. Could he very well win this race? Yes. In my algorithm, I have him finishing, I believe, third. But in terms of finishing third, it's not like I have him as a projection of finishing 3.0. I believe I have Kyle Busch winning this race. If not Kyle Busch, Joey Logano. But they're projected with a 15/16-ish projected finish. And that's the guy in first. That's how much variance there is in a race like this. So even though I have Ryan Blaney projected to finish well amongst the others, it's still pretty bad compared to starting in 16. There's not a lot of upside here. Like I said, he can win the race. I have that happening, I believe, around 6-8% of the time. I forget the exact number off the top of my head. And with his starting position, there's upside here. Like, I have him optimal currently around 20-ish% of the time. But if he's going to be over-owned compared to that, I want to be underweight on the field just because there is a lot of risk still. And people won't perceive that because they see Ryan Blaney. They think excellent plate driver. And I am not biased. I just follow the data. I got a Ryan Blaney shirt on right now. Like, he's awesome. He could win, but there's still a lot of risk involved. Joey Logano, his teammate, he'll be starting in 10th. You can kind of put him in that same exact category as Ryan Blaney, but starting in 10th, which makes it even just more difficult to get there when their upside is very similar. As far as finishing position is concerned, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, both guys that are going to be threats to win. Kyle Busch is a co-favorite with Denny Hamlin to win this race. Chase Elliott is in second with Ryan Blaney. Like, these guys are very good plate racers. I think Kyle Busch of this group, from Kyle Larson to Busch here, will probably be the highest owned. He's going to project the best. He's got nice place differential starting in the mid-pack. But once again, there's a lot of downside here. And while I think he will be pretty chalky on this way, I think he'll probably approach around 30% ownership. There's a lot of risk. Like, if he wrecks and finishes 30th, like, it's not the worst play in the world, because I'm sure other guys are going to wreck from starting in the top, but there's risk there. And we don't want risk, especially in cash games. Like, I'd much rather play Martin Truex Jr. If I had the money for both him and Kyle Busch, I am playing Martin Truex Jr. over Busch. I would play Daniel Suarez over Busch, Ricky Stenhouse. Like I said, it's all about the place differential. Can you still play these guys? Yes, but don't get crazy with their ownership, because they're going to be higher owned just because people are looking to fill out their lineups. They have good name value. They're going to project awesome, but projections aren't always like everything at a track like this. So while Busch projects well for me, you got to be careful because the ownership will get up there. Now, Brad Keselowski, $9,200. This is a cash game staple. He has the highest floor projection for me. He has the highest ceiling projection for me. He's going to be the highest owned driver on this slate. He's the most optimal driver for me. Hard not to like him. He's always a threat to win at these types of tracks. He had an issue in the duel where he got absolutely cleaned out. I think it was by Suarez. He had to take a penalty and something happened. But starting in 34th, I mean, there is no reason not to like him. He looks awesome. Play him in cash. But in tournaments, he's probably going to be a bit over-owned, and there's definitely some pivots we can make. It's kind of like the example I gave earlier, where if Chase Elliott's starting 38th and you get like Zane Smith starting 37th, there's a lot more leverage to be had with Zane Smith instead of playing, in this example, I guess, Keselowski, because I think Zane Smith is starting in the 30s for this one. And then William Byron starting in 5th. I'm not playing him. If he wins, so be it. I still think I can get there without it. Dropping down to the 8K range, Chris Buescher, excellent plate racer, but I can't play him starting in 6th. Christopher Bell, you throw him in that exact same category as Busch, Elliott, Blaney, Larson. They're probably going to be anywhere from 20 to 30% owned. I'm most likely going to be underweight on that. Bubba Wallace is unplayable. We all played him in the duels. He did well. Enjoy those winnings from him because we're not playing him this time. Tyler Reddick starting too far from me, starting at 11th. If you are playing 20 max, 150 max, maybe you get a couple of shares there. But if you are hand building, single entry, 3 max, I don't think I'm getting a Tyler Reddick. Ryan Preece, I will play. He's going to be an RFK car. We know they can typically draft well with the Fords. He's starting in 27th. There's certainly upside there. And I don't think the ownership's going to be too high on Ryan Preece. Early projections don't have that being the case, but he doesn't have that like nice and sweet 3 at the beginning of his starting position where everyone likes to flock to. But he's almost there in 27th, so he'd be a nice pivot in tournaments. Like, you can play him instead of Bowman. Obviously, there's more downside because Bowman has an amazing floor, but still, fine play in tournaments. Alex Bowman, he is a cash game lock similar to Brad Keselowski. If he doesn't wreck, he'll be battling for the top 10. Not a lot of downside at all, and there's all the upside. That's what's great about play tracks. Ross Chastain in 9th, he is unplayable. Chase Briscoe is the worst play in the slate. Briscoe could win this race and not be in the optimal lineup. We have seen that before. Stenhouse won on the pole at Daytona, was not in the optimal. There is no reason to play Briscoe. He is the worst floor projection, or for potential, I guess, on this entire slate. Austin Cindric. So the nice thing about Cindric is I have a bet on him to win at plus 2,800. I will play 0 of him in DFS. So if he wins, I win money for that. If he doesn't win, well, I don't have him in DFS, so that's fine. And it's just a flyer bet anyway. So no Cindric for me. No Todd Gillen starting in 14th. If you're playing 150, maybe like a couple of shares of Gillen, but other than that, no. Josh Berry, great play starting in 29th. I believe in the leverage scores. These are early runs. It's Friday. Ownership is probably going to fluctuate a bit until we get to Sunday, but I think Josh Berry was in the top 10 as far as like one of the better leverage plays on the slate. He is in basically a Penske ride, and if he can work with them, you can always get a potential top 10 there. I don't think the ownership will be crazy, because if you look down, you have Suarez in 36, Truex in 39 that are going to eat up some ownership. Ricky Stenhouse, always popular, play tracks, always seems to start in the 30s. He has race winning potential. You don't need race winning potential, but he has it starting deep in the pack. But he's a bit wreckers or checkers, so you have to keep that in mind as well. Ty Gibbs is in the danger zone. I'd say you throw him in that same range as guys like probably Ryan Preece, Michael McDowell. We haven't talked about him yet, but they're starting in the mid to lower 20s. I mean, they're playable. You get shares of them, but if you're playing single entry 3 max, you're probably not clicking their names. Suarez and Truex, cash game staples. I think the cash lineup basically speaks for itself this week. You're playing Stenhouse. I'm sorry, not Stenhouse. You're playing Keselowski, Alex Bowman. You're playing Suarez, Martin Truex. And as we look a little bit lower, I see a couple other guys that are pretty obvious. Michael McDowell starting in 25th. He's a fine tournament play. We saw him run well in the duels until he ended up having an issue where I believe it was a penalty. Then he went back in the pack and kind of got stuck there. But I think he's interesting in GPPs. I want to say he was in the top 10 as far as leverage is concerned. I'd have to double check that. But if you do have access to the Patreon stuff, you can always check that out yourself. Justin Allgaier in the 40 car starting in 19th. Not really any interest there. Just he's not in the back half of the pack and just kind of a dead spot. Same with Austin Dillon. I don't see any reason to play him. Noah Gragson starting at 32nd. Fire away. I think he's one of the better turn plays on the entire slate. And we know those front row cars can run well at super speedways. And even last year when he wasn't on front row, he was in Stewart Haas. He had some decent runs as well. And I think in the 500, he started in the 30s last year. And it was, I think, the highest scoring driver too. AJ Allmendinger starting in 13th. He typically runs well at Daytona, but I can't do it in that starting position. Justin Haley's a good plate racer starting in 35th. I do like that. I think he's probably one of the better cash game plays. Carson Hocevar, I can tell you exactly right now what Carson Hocevar is going to do in this race. He is going to stay in the very back of the pack. He is going to wait for Rex, and if he finishes 15th, that's fine. He's not going to go for the win. We see this every single year. If you're looking at his running position at Daytona, it's 34.9. That is by far the worst of any driver. If you expand this to an even bigger sample size of all the super speedways, we have a 7-race sample size. His running position is 29.7, which is only worse than Allgaier, and he only ran 1 race. So what he's going to do is he's going to sit in the back. He's going to wait for Rex. And guess what? That is awesome. That is what you want from your drivers at a track like this. He did it in the dual race. So I don't see why he's not going to do it in this one. So Hocevar, very, very safe play. Eric Jones, he did all we needed for him in the duels. I actually cashed a ticket of him at top 3 at plus 1,000, which was nice. Got a little bit of cash there, and he obviously did great in DFS, but we cannot play him in the 500. SVG starting in 26. It's okay. He's not going to project very well compared to these other guys that are starting further back, but like he's in the deep of the pack player pool at the very least, but definitely in the lower end of the totem pool for that. Cole Custer starting in 30th. That puts him firmly in play. Riley Herbst is starting a little bit further to the front than I'd like him to. Like, you can mix him in if you're doing 150, but he's not a complete fade, but he's definitely not someone I'm like, yeah, we got to play Riley Herbst. Now, Elio starting in 41st. DraftKings did announce that he's going to get a starting position. He's going to get points. So he cannot lose you points, and he can only go up. I know he made a really stupid move in the duels, but he's in a Trackhouse car starting in 41st. If he finishes 15th, you need him in your lineup. So I'm assuming he's probably not going to go crazy and try to kill the field for the win. He might. I mean, obviously, he's not here for points racing. It's possible, but I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I just want him to get 20th place, and we'd all be very happy. John Hunter Nemechek starting in 18th. That's too far for me. Zane Smith, excellent play in 37th. I mean, these guys are not losing you points. Sure, if they finish 39th, it's possible, yes, but even then, they're going to outscore these guys that wreck up front, so the floor is fantastic. Jimmy Johnson starting in 40th, pretty much the same thing as Elio, where these guys are not losing points, and they have all the upside in the world. They just got to ride it out and hopefully not wreck early. Ty Dillon's unplayable in 7th, and Cody Ware, it sucks. I play him every Daytona. He's always like 3% owned. He's starting in 36. Nobody wants to play Cody Ware. If you're looking at his races at Daytona recently, 4-race sample size, he's averaging 60 points per race. That is better than any single driver. All the way down here, little Cody Ware, even on FanDuel, the most points per race. Average finish of 10th. Running position of 25th. You just stay in the back, you collect your points in the end. That's what Cody Ware is good at. Unfortunately, he qualified kind of high this time in 28th, but it's not like he's losing the pack or anything. He can ride, and he can actually compete a little bit. We saw him not be complete dust in the duels, which is why he's got this higher starting position. I don't think anyone's going to play Cody Ware, and while I normally have it higher, my optimal rate on him is roughly around 5 to 7%. He'll probably be lower owned than that, just from where he's starting, so it's pretty easy to be overweight on Cody Ware. If you don't play 10% Cody Ware, I mean, you'll have leverage, and if he finishes 13th, heck yeah, that puts you in a good spot. Like, if Cody Ware finishes 13th, Jimmy Johnson has an issue where he gets caught up in a wreck, Alio, Martin Truex, I mean, that's leverage, you know, and it's something you're looking for at a track like this. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week, so I hope you enjoyed. If you did, even if you didn't, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are brand new. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure you leave them down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. If you want to check out all the extra content over on Patreon, link is down below in the description for that. You can get a free week trial if you want to come and test drive all the tools for Daytona. I'd love for you to stick around. I plan on having my live stream probably around 12 Eastern, so come and say hi. Always a good time. But I wish you all the best, and I'll see you all next time.